Who is Jen?
Who am I? I'm a mother, a wife. I am a mindset coach, a educator, so I'm also a university lecturer, and previously a solicitor as well.
Wow, that's so while that's just a few different things, they're big things. I can't imagine what life would have been like for you on a day-to-day basis. What does life look like for you?
It's very structured. Everything is planned. So I time block a lot, and I also look at energy management, so I call it. So what I mean by that is doing the most difficult tasks first thing in the day, and then doing the more passive, I call them passive tasks towards the end of the day. So thanks for mentioning that because sometimes I reflect and I'm like, I don't know how I did so much. I do
Mm,
look back and think, geez, how did I manage it? And you just kind of do. And it's a bit of a mix of somewhat a rigid schedule, but also being able to pivot enough. And that's something that parenting has really taught me that things sometimes just don't go the way they're meant to. Like today's example, like we were meant to do this a couple of hours earlier, but things come up and you just need to learn to pivot and react in the productive manner as well. Like it's easy to just get strong and say, okay, well, it's not worked. My whole day's out of whack and
mm.
let really destructive emotions and behaviors take over. But it's really looking at it and go, how do I make this work differently?
Yeah, I love that you just sort of you know what your priorities are for the day and you just make it work. You might have to do a bit of Tetrising, but at the end of the day, you make it work and there's no shame around asking for someone to be more flexible around that as well. Has it always been the case where you've time blocked and you've just made things happen, or was there a bit of a process to that?
It was just by product of me choosing to have a lot of I guess conflicting commitments, and the old school way of doing it was putting it in an Outlook calendar, and then that's just
Mm,
how kind of everything built on beyond like the 9 to 5 schedule. Like everything else had to kind of have a slot in there. But what it also does is it forces you to get things done within a period of time as well. So what I mean by that is it's easier to wake up and say, I'm going to finally, declutter my wardrobe. Well, that's too vague. So it'll be like, okay, from 9 to 10, I am blocked out to declutter my wardrobe. So you're forced to work within that time constraint. So you're not essentially fluffing around. So
yeah.
that's like the practicalities and the magic of why I create that rigid schedule because you are forced. And the
Mm,
the way you approach it is don't put the emotion into it. It's in there and you just follow it. So you follow what
yeah.
the past you told you to do in your own calendar. And that's like my main hack of getting things done. And it's always at the first thing at the start of the day is to do the stuff that you'll procrastinate over. If I know there's a work email that will take me half an hour to draft, I will do it at 6 a.m. because it gets the hardest part done. And then I feel like I'm in a winner's mindset anyway,
And
because
you can
I'm
just
like, I've
cruise
done
after that.
the hardest thing of my day and it's only
Yeah.
6:30 a.m. So it's being smart within what time we have and working around how we function best.
It's funny, like some people, when they go onto the journey of like personal development and getting those wins and getting that momentum going, they always start off, they say that you should start off by making your bed as your first win. But then there's you. It's like, I'm getting up early ass in the morning, doing the first thing that I hate doing to get it out of the way. Wow. One day you'll be like running miles and miles like David Goggins, just shouting out inspirational slurs down the road. I am curious. We we've all gone through like a journey to get to where we are today, to get to the, I suppose, discipline that we have right now. Where did you feel all of this sort of began? And I want you to sort of paint a picture about before your sort of story begins.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't always this orderly or organized. And reflecting back, people still tell me, "Oh, you're so fortunate to, be in very successful careers." And it's funny how society labels particular careers successful,
Mm,
but that wasn't always the case. Like I was. I grew up with the idea of like being limited and a lot of scarcity in my life. And it all starts like pretty much when I was in my mother's womb. Like, so my parents, they're from East Timor and they escaped the Indonesian invasion in the 1980s and migrated to Australia. So their education stopped when they were in grade five. So unskilled
Mm,
migrants, they were put in commission housing in Richmond, Melbourne, which is the commission housing is still there. So that's where I was born and grew up in commission housing. It's a very rough suburb for those that know Richmond and in Melbourne. There's still drug deals that happen on Victoria Street to this day.
mm,
So that was kind of like what I grew up with, and because my parents came with literally no money in their pockets and worked very like unskilled jobs. So my mother worked as a machinist, sewing, and my father worked any labor-based job he could find. I didn't actually have toys growing up. I
mm,
remember like when I would go to like a cousin's house, like I would play with their toys, but never owned like toys. And that's all I knew. Like my life was
mm,
limited. So my first belief was that my life, I accepted that I lived within limitation. So
mm.
that's the mindset I set for myself. And only now in my adult years, after doing a lot of inner work, really appreciate that your childhood upbringing really shapes you to think a certain way and accept yourself in a certain way. And it came to a point in my life where I had that mindset shift. But going back, so grew up in commission housing, had a okay childhood. My
Mm.
parents did the best they could. There were some traumatic
Mm.
events that had happened
So
that,
when you were growing up and you had that sort of feeling and sensation of scarcity or limitations or restrictions, was that just the norm that you were growing up to be in, or did you actually acknowledge and feel that, oh, I don't have as much as people around me, and I feel quite sad about that?
yeah, that was just the norm because I didn't know any better. Like,
Mm.
there wasn't anyone saying to me, this is how your life should be. We never ate takeaway. The first time I had Macca's was literally when I was 15. Like,
15.
that's like, yeah, that's the
Wow.
time. And I look back and it's like, well, it's Macca's. Who wants takeaway now? But like,
Yeah,
you think
yeah.
about a kid, a typical thing to do is get a Happy Meal, right?
It's
But
the
we
best
didn't
thing in the
even do
world.
that. So
Oh.
that's it. Like I said, I didn't know any better. So
Mm,
for me, that was my normal. And only when I grew up and obviously was subjected to primary school and high school, and people question things and made me realize, oh, okay, so my childhood was, quite limited, and we were poor, like
mm,
we were, and everything I would ask or query, my parents would say, we don't have the money for that. Like, can I, play inter-school sports? Can I do netball? No, we don't have money to pay for you to have that membership. Like, you just do your study type of thing. So my parents are from East Timor, but my mother's um, background is Chinese and she holds very conservative Chinese values. So just growing up, once my brother was born when I was six, a lot of I guess, the attention, dedication, and also financial resources was dedicated to him over me. There was like a big difference there.
mm,
So then I kind of a byproduct of, I guess, my family choosing to honor the boy in the family was that became second best, and just kind of grew up in his shadows, really. Like, and I had a lot of resentment for him growing up because I felt like I lost a lot of my childhood,
mm,
not experiencing the same amount of love that he did. And now I don't, once again, the credit to like a lot of inner work, and I still see a clinical psychologist to this day, and I'm
mm.
more open to saying that because it is what's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't resent him or anything. It's not his fault. I don't resent my parents either.
Mm.
Like, did it make it very difficult for me and cause me to go down like a very bad detrimental down spiral in my teenage years? Yes, it did, but everything did happen for a reason, and I honestly
Mm.
don't think I would have been got to where I am now if I didn't experience the essentially the challenges that were presented to me.
I love that there was a silver lining in that sort of area there, where even though you felt a level of resentment, you've worked through that and it's no longer there. At the time, I'm curious about what resentment look like for you in terms of that dynamic? Was it obvious or was it internal one? Was it behind his back? What was it, more towards him or your parents?
It was definitely earlier days. It was towards him being like the little baby in the family, and
Mm,
suddenly the intentions on him. Um, And then as we grew up, and to give you like very specific examples, when I was 15, I wanted money to buy jeans. That's what a teenage girl wants. So my parents
mm,
said to me, go and get a job and go pay for your jeans. So I did.
mm,
I worked at, KFC, and my mum would charge me petrol money to take me there as well because she was trying to teach me the value of money.
mm,
And when my brother turned 16, they were like, don't work. You need to get ready to go to like a great uni. Um, he wasn't interested in getting his license, but when he turned 18, they gifted him a car, whereas I
wow.
saved up for a car. So we had very, very different upbringings, and to
Mm,
the point where I came across my father's will by accident, and there was a larger share that was dedicated to go to my brother over me.
wow.
And I'm not there for the money, but it just is quite disheartening to be valued less than your sibling by your own parents. So it created this sense of worthlessness in me that I'm worth nothing, I'm not of
Mm,
value. And that did really, yeah, impact me. And it took, things like that. And to this day, I don't think I can't say I'm perfectly recovered, like, hence why there is ongoing psychological support there just
mm,
to work on those elements. But what it did teach me, and going back to silver linings, is you obviously feel crap, and it really instilled this idea of advocacy in me, where I wanted to advocate for people that did feel like a sense of worthlessness, and that's where the dream of being a lawyer came about for me.
mm. So the whole idea of valuing your brother a little bit more than yourself, if not a lot more, perhaps, was that a cultural thing? If so, do you feel like other people or and other families of the same background feel that same way, or is that something that they just sort of accept and don't think much more than just, oh, okay, that's just how it is, and they don't attach emotion to it? What do you think others' experiences might be if there are others?
Yeah, so I look at my cousins, and my parents are definitely on the very extreme end of it, that
Mm,
there is slight favoritism, but not to the extent that I personally experienced. I do speak to a couple of other women from other Asian ethnicities that do experience somewhat similar positions, and it's unfortunate that it's just what is accepted. And coming from the Chinese culture, there's this big emphasis on respecting your parents, regardless of their opinions being morally right or wrong. It's just the respect that you give to someone that is older than you, especially your own parents. So it's just it's accepted across the board, but unfortunately, I do feel like I've experienced it to the more extreme end of things. But
mm,
we're now, me being a first generation Asian Australian, like it was a massive influx in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We're slowly seeing that very conservative view disappear just by way of the next generations coming in. Me being westernized, obviously, I wouldn't be passing that on to my my line of generation and so on. So no doubt the Western culture will slowly change that very strict view.
I think the idea of respect is something that everyone talks about, but I think everyone has very different views and ideas of what respect looks like, both in their personal lives and professional lives. What do you think respect looks like in your world?
Yeah, respect is a really good word. It's putting I think it's the most important aspect, and what you should give everyone regardless.
Mm,
The amount of respect that you give to, say, your teacher, as we're both educators, compared to the respect that you give someone that you're walking down the street that is homeless asking you for money. I think for it is holding everyone to the same level of standard and offering them that level of respect. Everyone deserves that level of respect. I definitely think they do. Um, some people might think that's a bizarre view, but I do think that everyone is inherently good. So people might think,
Mm.
well, this person's done this thing, it's really wrong. Um, they don't deserve my level of respect. Well, I think people are inherently good and some people just do bad things. There's a big difference. There's no bad person, but everyone deserves the same level of respect. And to lower your level of respect to one person is actually you lowering yourself to that standard.
Yeah, I love that when you're describing it, you separated the action from the person. So if it was negative, it was just the action. It wasn't actually the person that you should be attaching the negativity to, but the thing that they did, which is temporary or one that isn't static. I don't think a lot of people attach negativity to the person, as in they're a bad person. When I have discussions around respect, I generally encourage respect everyone around you, but at the same time, just keep an eye out for those bad actions if they do come up. It doesn't matter what title, what status that they have. There's always going to be people that do things that don't make you feel super comfortable, and I think it's wise to just keep an eye out just in case. And I don't mean stress over it and don't tear your hair out just in case something happens, but don't trust your life to every single human being just because they have a title, you know? Um,
Yes.
yeah, so what happened next? What's so I suppose, next leg of your journey?
Yeah, so just going back to that, so the childhood, so that happened, and I mentioned a bit earlier that downward spiral. So just had
Mm,
a really big misalignment with my parents from I guess like a generational and cultural perspective. They're new to Australia. I only know the Western way of things, so we just really clashed when I was about 13, 14, 15. The teenage years where I just wanted to have some friends, hang out. They were quite strict on me. I
mm,
couldn't go to like the local shops to hang out and watch a movie. I didn't do any of that. My friends couldn't come over. I couldn't go over their house, so no sleepovers. So because of my restricted social life, I wasn't able to actually engage in any meaningful friendships.
mm.
And that really impacted my ability to enjoy high school. So when it came to year 11, I just couldn't do it anymore. I would go to school and I would literally have no friends. And I dreaded lunchtime.
Ugh.
I didn't know where to go, where to hide. Like I didn't want to sit in the canteen. I sometimes sat at the end of the oval, but I just couldn't do it anymore. So I dropped out of high school. And when I did, it was um obviously quite distressing for my parents, especially my
I'll bet.
mother, who
Yeah.
said, you're bringing shame on the family name. Um, we've come here to give you a good life, and this is how you reward us.
Mm.
So, and very hurtful words. You're not my daughter anymore.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you know, raising you was for nothing. So it was pretty intense time, but I just didn't want to be in that system, like the school system anymore. And I just worked at KFC. Like I worked at KFC earning $4.64 an hour. I remember that amount because I couldn't even buy a two-piece feed with what I was earning per hour. And that was my life. And for the first time, I actually felt like I had friends. You're working with the same people. And so I felt like I belonged and I never felt like I belonged anywhere.
Mm,
Just due to the restrictive childhood. So there I was, like having some sort of friendship group from working at the takeaway shop. And then, unfortunately, that extended to hanging around the wrong groups. Um, Other teenagers that were in a lot of violence, in a lot of drugs as well. So
mm,
naturally, to feel accepted, I was quite open to it. So I started taking drugs as well, going to clubs with a fake ID, and that just became my life. And I
mm.
didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And then I would get the occasional person that said, "What do you want to do with yourself?" And I thought, well, I'm 17. What's wrong with what I'm doing? But
Yeah,
I
it's
look back
interesting.
and, it was obviously destructive behaviors like feeding myself toxic
Mm,
materials, drinking, subjecting myself to environments that weren't ideal.
So it sounds
Um,
like for a long period of time, you were just sort of going with the flow and accepting what came with just life in general until, school. I was just curious around what your thoughts were about the lifestyle that you'd had, that you'd started developing because you were at KFC. And of course, you were loving the interactions and the social life that came with it. Did it feel questionable at all? Was it something that you were umming and ahhing about? Or were you just sort of excited to just be with friends and you're happy in that moment?
I was actually happy. Like I mentioned, for the first time, I felt like I had a sense of community.
Mm,
I was valued. So because I didn't get that validation from my own parents or didn't have friends in high school to give me that sense of belonging, and it's an inherent human need. Like I just craved it, and
mm,
I was able to have that working at Cape C as well as hanging around these people that weren't no engaging in the best productive behaviors. But once again, I was valued. They wanted me there. So naturally, I felt like, although at the back of my mind, I'm like, this shouldn't be what my life is about. I was willing to accept that that was it for me. And
mm.
the catalyst that really broke me free was my my so-called friends at the time. I was actually assaulted one day, physically assaulted. I had a mild concussion. I was hospitalized, and I was under because I was under 18. They called my mother, and my mother said, "You deserve it," and hung up. So, and she didn't.
Whoa.
They didn't come to pick me up or visit me. So I stayed there overnight, and I had vertigo for a week because of the concussion, and it really allowed me to reflect because of what happened. I'm like, is this the life I want? Where my so-called friends have essentially betrayed me over something
Mm,
very trivial. I was hanging around with a group of um, teenagers of Asian ethnicity, and my then partner was European. So there was an issue with that, and that's how it
mm,
kind of became out of control over something just so stupid like that. Um, and then having been physically assaulted, I felt quite emotionally, no, not quite, I was emotionally and physically, broken. And at that point, I'm like, I'm taking drugs on the weekend, like, and at one point, I almost overdosed. I had 6 ecstasy tablets, and my body was shaking, and I couldn't control myself. And I look back and
mm.
think I'm so grateful that I didn't actually, um, get hospitalized for that. But there were so many
Yeah.
close calls like that. And looking back, it's like it was, a little bit, it was stupid of what I went through. But
Mm,
once again, if I wasn't actually beat up, I wouldn't have taken a step back and gone, I feel so physically, emotionally, and spiritually crap. I've hit that bottom point where I know I don't want to feel like this again. And
mm.
that's the point where I'm like, I need to get my life together. I need to demand more for myself because these people, and going back to the word of respect, they clearly didn't respect or value me to do
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. Um, and that's when I thought to myself, I need, I loved the idea of advocacy. I'm like, and going through that process, when I looked into like a compensation scheme for how I was assaulted,
Mm,
it was minimal, and I thought like, and like I couldn't get any legal advice over it because it was such, in a lawyer's eyes, a trivial thing to happen. So I thought, well, I want to be the change in the system and advocate for others and inform them
mm.
what they are entitled to. So that's where the whole idea of being a lawyer came about. And then I told myself then and there, okay, well, I want to go
Mm.
to Monash, which is one of the top law schools in Australia, and it has to be there. But, I was a high school dropout at
Yeah.
17. There was no way I was going to get in there. Um,
So it sounds like there was quite a distinct period where you'd felt that low and you're on a journey of finding what your true calling could have been or could be from there on. What was that one moment where, like, how did you even start to think that I want to go down that path? Because the first thing, whenever I'm upset, I don't think, oh, I could do more. Why don't I start doing more for others? How did you start that sort of train of thought?
it is just the point of hitting rock bottom, and also no one, it was realizing, well, no one's actually going to help me. Like, I realized that when my parents didn't come
Mm,
to the hospital, my friends weren't there supporting me. And I'm like, no one's here to save me. And I have to actually save myself. Like, I need to take
mm,
the step and take some sort of action to move forward. So it's finally actually telling myself and learning to have a good, now having a good relationship with myself that it's like, I need to take a chance on myself to do better. But before that, I had essentially just given up
mm,
on myself just by way of blaming how I was brought up and what I didn't have.
mm. It's such a small thing, like the desire, the wanting to help people, that we don't know if it's going to go anywhere beyond just helping the people around me. I think when people realize that they can, they just to find that one thing that'll get them there, then that one thing could lead to an amazing lifestyle and fulfillment. But it's not everyone gets that catalyst that helps them get there. But yeah, okay, so you had to go to Monash University without the, I suppose, qualifications for it. How on earth did you get that?
Yeah, it was a really long journey. So first of all, I had to go back to high school. I applied at a couple of high schools, and being halfway into year 11, like a lot of them didn't want to take me. So I went back to the high school I dropped out of, and I said, I'm here to finish. I just want to get my year 12 done. And they said, look, you've actually, missed 6 months of school. If you want to stay with your cohort, you'll have to do VCAL, which is applied learning. So I did that, which meant that I didn't get like a ATA score for the purposes of uni selection, but I was able to finish year 12 with the certificate itself. So I
Mm,
did that knowing that, well, that's not enough. And you need pretty much a 99 enter score to get into Monash Law, and my enter score was zero. So, I
mm,
was a bit far off. And I thought, look, I just really need to take not even baby steps, there were micro steps. Like baby steps is still somewhat big leaps towards the big steps. So it was like very small, I call it micro steps. So, okay, I need further education. So I went to TAFE, did a business course for 2 years and achieved like 90% in that course. And then I went through Deakin College, which was like a pathway to university. So it was like a diploma of commerce. So once again, not quite law, but I needed to do more to show that I was capable of getting into university. So that's already 3 years. So a diploma of commerce, which got me into a bachelor's of arts and commerce. Still not law yet because I didn't have enough results for that. So I went on to do bachelor's in arts and commerce for 2.5 years, and by that point I was sitting on a distinction average at Deakin University, though not Monash yet. And I had the option to transfer to law, but still Monash law was still a little bit out
had to
of
be
reach.
Monash.
So I'm like, that's okay. So I finished the double degree, passed, and before I actually graduated, I applied for Monash Law as a postgraduate. And because I was still sitting on my distinction average, they sent me an early offer, and that was the best moment for me. Like after a double degree, which was 4 years, a year of the diploma, and 2 years of TAFE. So, that's 6.5 years to then be accepted to Monash Law. Yes, it sounds like a long time, but when you want something that bad, the time frame doesn't matter. We
Mm,
have our whole, like I was still in my early 20s at the time. You have your whole life to pursue what you're after. And now reflecting back in the world of instant gratification we live in, people probably think, oh, that's way too hard to do. But it's like, well, for me, that was ages ago now. And I've had like a decade in the legal industry and a very successful one. And it just made it all so much sweeter to then go to the uni I wanted to do Monash Law, where at the start I did feel like a bit of a black sheep. I was surrounded by students that all came from private grammar schools. Their mums and dads were judges, barristers,
mm,
big corporates. So there was definitely a sense of feeling a bit of like imposter syndrome there. But also at the same time, it's like I belong here because I worked so much harder to get where I am,
mm,
and it was a lot more gratifying. And that just
yeah.
really going back on momentum. just building off that, did the 3 years at Monash Law, graduated, and
Mm.
during law school, I wanted to go to Slater and
Was
Gordon, which is one of the top national firms. So I would always walk past their office and say, I will be a
mm,
partner of this law firm every day. So visualizing it, but also working towards that
mm,
with intention. And the 1 month before I graduated from law school, I was offered a graduate program with them. So it all kind of worked out, but it was
yeah.
a lot of hard work. Like Friday nights, I put my head down, got the work done, and I wasn't afraid to. I wasn't afraid to, you know, um, just put everything I had into it. And once the vision is clear, the obstacles kind of move out of your way. So when people are like, oh, isn't this hard or this hard? It's like, no, when you know you want something that bad, nothing will stop you. It just becomes, your drive becomes relentless, and it's just learning to tap into that drive. But if your heart's not there, you subconsciously create obstacles.
Mm.
Whereas mine was the opposite. I wanted it that bad, like anything else in between wouldn't stop me from getting there. And it did, it happened. Like the only factor that was difficult was the time frame, but looking back, it's like it's so what, it was 7, 8 years. Like, it was the journey itself was a beautiful one, and you don't just walk away from the degree. I made a lot of friends and also had hands-on experience. It's just so much to gain, and a part of the beauty of life in terms of what you're exposed to on the path, the journey that you take.
Yeah, it's like if there's something that you really, really want, and not just as a once-off sort of thing, but a really big goal, it no longer becomes a, oh, can I? It then shifts to a, how do I make this happen? What
Exactly.
pathways
Yeah.
are available to me? And if those pathways close down or they shut down, okay, great. How else can I get there? What other pathways can
Yeah.
I create to make it happen? One thing that I'm
Correct.
curious about is going from a high school dropout. I don't think you mentioned about your academic past before that. Were you ever a book smart kind of person at high school, or was that something that was new to you as you were studying, and your drive to pursue that helped you sort of, well, yeah, what was it like?
No, I'm definitely not book smart, and people think I am intelligent. I'm not. So when I was in so my parents put me in Chinese school when I was a kid.
Mm,
I failed horribly, so they took me out of three different Chinese schools because I just didn't get it. And then during high school, they like when I was year 8 and 9, they put me in tutoring. I
mm,
also struggled. So they took me out of that. So I actually did struggle academically. I also, English is a second language. Obviously, I speak fluent, but I was put in ESL, which is
mm.
English as a second language. So I was put in with everyone that did have very broken English, as my classes. So no, I'm definitely not. And then to go on to work at a top tier firm and then a top tier uni, like
Yeah.
it's just hard work, and also accepting that I belong there and that you
Mm,
don't have to fit a mold. I think that's the biggest thing. People think you have to fit a mold to be somewhere where you aspire to be. You don't. I was
mm,
ashamed to admit that I grew up in commission housing, and my parents still live in a very low socioeconomic suburb in Melbourne to this day. Like,
mm,
there was a lot of shame in me admitting that. And sometimes I would actually lie in case I had a lot of fear that people wouldn't accept me for me if I actually conceded that. But now I realize it's actually a strength. And it is so important to accept you as yourself. And there's completely nothing wrong or shameful about it.
yeah, it's funny. Like as soon as we open up and we accept and step into who we are, rather than who we want others to see us as, then the world just seems like a brighter place, and it feels so much lighter. Like you can just be yourself and say and do whatever without any fear of judgment. You're at the firm, or yeah, so you got into the firm, and you are you leaving, or have you left, or what's the situation now? Or yeah, what happened?
Yeah, so I had a good 10 years in the profession, and I've left the profession to focus on my mindset coaching business, but also because I've achieved financial freedom. So just in a great position where I can support like my son and still live a good life. And I thought at the end of the
Mm.
day, I can positively influence people in other ways, and that's why I still educate students, because you are able to positively influence them. And what I would have benefited from when I had my downward spiral is someone that teaches you how to deal with, health, wealth, fitness, every all aspects of the pillars of life. Unless you have fantastic parents that teach you that, we don't actually have the skills to equip us to achieve that. Like no one teaches us about finances. Like no one taught me about how to achieve financial freedom in my 30s. Like I
Mm.
had to go off on my own bat and educate myself on that to achieve that for me. So I thought to myself, that's why mindset coaching and mindset in general is so important.
It's interesting. It's sort of like the initial catalyst that led you to law. It sounds like you're still kind of fulfilling that desire to help others get from where you were to where you are, or where you'd like to be. And the catalyst from moving from law to where you are now is your family. Is your family your sort of why now? Or is there something bigger and greater that you're sort of working towards? Or is this the goal or the dream, I suppose, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely family is first now, because family will be there at the end of the day. Everything else does come and go in life. But second of all, how can I impact other people? So, the vision is people that are going through the same thing, where they have issues with like self-limiting beliefs or behaviors from shaped by their childhood, by society, by culture. And sometimes you're not even aware of it because it's all inbuilt on a subconscious level, but just helping them on a greater scale, that's the vision. And even if it's not hundreds I impact, if it's only a couple, I'm happy with that. But that's the new vision now. And I feel like the other pillars of life take care of itself if you just focus on, what my personal purpose is now, which is serving others.
Everything sort of falls into place once you've got that one main thing that fills your cup. Um, so the narrative that I'm picking up is sort of paying it forward, either what you wish you had or what you have. So you're paying it forward to your is it just the son, or do you have other kids, or
Just like the next generation, really.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you're paying it forward to the next generation. What sort of lessons would you put forward to those around you? Maybe whether it's related to the story or not, what is the main thing that you really want them to gain from hearing about you?
Yeah, look, the biggest lesson I've learned, and it's really hard to do in practice, is you need to just trust yourself and be your best cheerleader. We live in a state of fear. We lack
Mm,
confidence. The reality is, if you want to be Elon Musk, you can be Elon Musk. Like, the difference between him and you and us is that he believes in himself. He trusts his decision making. He's not scared to fail, whereas we're scared to be judged, scared to fail, and all this fear is because we don't trust ourselves enough. But if you have that solid relationship to understand, yes, I will rely on myself, yes, I'll make a promise to myself and not break it, and yes, I'll be compassionate to myself when I need to be, that's what's actually going to propel you forward. How many times, like, for example, you give your mate some advice and you're so strong and you remain objective for them, but when it comes to your own personal life or goals, it doesn't seem as easy to do the same thing, but you can do it for a friend. Even
mm,
exercising compassion, it's easier to a friend than yourself. Like the way you criticize yourself, you don't do to a mate. And like I said, it's really hard because society tells you you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough. Consumerism tells you all that. So you're wired to believe that you are not good enough already. That's a
mm,
big component, but accepting that you are, but you can actually be greater is
mm.
where the real magic happens.
Yeah, I love the sort of message that we all sort of hear. Keep basically doing what you're doing and just trust in the process, really. One thing that I've noticed being a teacher, but also just having conversations with people, we've heard the idea of we need to teach people how to think, not what to think. But what I've also found is we even do that with mindset and the way that we assess our work. When we're younger, we go to the teacher or go to our parents or go to our friends and we sort of look for that, is this good enough? Or do you like what I've done? And it's great to say, yes, I love it and I love it and I love it. But the more you say that, the more they use that as the basis of, am I successful or not? If you start to train people around you to think, okay, is this your best work? Is there a way you could make it better? If you've done the best that you can do, fantastic. Yes, absolutely. But if you feel like there's room for improvement, then let's see if we can get that 1% a bit higher. Because then you start to learn what you're capable of. But even more than that, you start to accept the process and all the failings, if you want to call it that, and all the successes that come with it. Okay. So I have this little section that I like to call truth or challenge, where someone from, well, the previous guests puts forward a question or a challenge, essentially like truth or dare.
Yeah.
So, which would you like to choose, truth or challenge?
I'll go truth.
If your house were to catch fire, what one item would you save and why? Now, we're assuming that any animals, any family members are all taken care of, they're safe. What one item would you save and why?
I'm going to be controversial and say nothing because
Okay.
everything besides my family and pet is replaceable. And it life is abundance in life is in the eyes of the viewer. And I think I'm not a millionaire, definitely not, but I do feel like my life is at a point where I'm so abundantly satisfied that if that did happen to us, I would just get out as soon as possible. Even photos, like the greatest memories I created and are inside my heart. Everything is replaceable, like including my wedding ring, my engagement ring. It's just a rock.
Mm,
But the sentiment of receiving it is within my memories. So, like looking in the house, there's nothing I would run back for. Um, I could lose. Obviously, I'd lose my work laptop, but that almost excites me that I can start fresh and
fresh.
create.
That answer, it makes me really excited to see where or what is next for you. Because not many people get to that point where they realize the only things that are worth saving are the people and the things that we love rather than any materialistic good, and realizing that all of that is replaceable and therefore is not important. A lot of people focus on how can I capture this moment? How can I record this moment for the future? I don't remember the last time I looked at my photos from 5 years 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and it actually it's a sense of freedom when you don't have an emotional attachment to any objects in your life. You are actually free inside, and
Mm.
it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, I think anyone who's done like a social media detox, for example, or a fast food detox, it might be hard for a little bit, but then after that little maybe couple of days, everyone feels so much better and so much happier and just freer.
Yes,
Um, Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and yeah, just giving us a bit of an insight as to who Jen is, what she's been through, and letting us know that what we see, there's so much more beneath that. So thank you again so much for sharing that.
pleasure.